The world told you that you were special. Your parents, your teachers, the self-help books stacked on your nightstand, they all insisted you had something unique, some hidden greatness waiting to emerge. And for years, maybe decades, you believed it. You waited for that moment when your exceptional nature would reveal itself, when circumstances would align and the universe would finally recognize what you always knew deep down, that you were different. That moment never came. And the longer you wait, the more uncomfortable the truth becomes. What if the story was wrong? What if the real issue isn't that the world failed to see your potential, but that the potential was never what you thought it was? The lie of being special serves a function. It keeps you comfortable. It gives you a reason to delay, to justify, to wait for conditions that will never arrive. It lets you believe that your ordinariness is temporary, a cosmic mistake that will eventually correct itself. Schopenhauer understood that suffering is intrinsic to existence. He also recognized that much of our pain comes from resisting what is. When you cling to the idea that you deserve exception from the common struggle, you multiply your misery. The weight becomes agony. The comparison becomes torture. You measure yourself against an imagined version of who you should be, and reality never survives that comparison. The question isn't whether you're special. The question is whether you're willing to do what's required without needing to be. Walk into any bookstore and you'll find hundreds of titles promising to unlock your hidden potential. Scroll through social media and you'll see thousands of people documenting their journey to greatness, their morning routines, their productivity hacks, their transformations. The entire machinery of modern culture runs on a single assumption, that everyone has something extraordinary inside them, and the only thing standing between you and that extraordinary life is the right method, the right mindset, the right moment. This creates a peculiar problem. If everyone is special, then nobody is. The word loses meaning. Exceptionality becomes the baseline expectation, which makes actual exceptionality nearly impossible to achieve. You're competing not just with the people around you, but with an entire generation raised on the same promise. The comfort comes from the waiting. As long as you believe your greatness is dormant, you can explain away your current position. The mediocre job, the unfulfilled relationships, the projects that never materialize, they're all temporary. They're what happens before the real you emerges. The belief protects you from a harder truth. This might be it. This might be what you get. And what you do with this reality matters more than any fantasy about what you deserve. There's a reason the self-improvement industry thrives while most people remain exactly where they are. The content provides the feeling of progress without requiring actual change. You watch the videos, read the books, follow the accounts. You learn about and monk mode and the power of discipline. You feel inspired, motivated, ready. And then Monday comes, and the inspiration fades, and you're back to scrolling looking for the next hit of potential. The cycle repeats because it's easier than the alternative. The alternative requires you to accept that the gap between where you are and where you want to be won't close through revelation. It closes through work that feels ordinary, repetitive, unglamorous. The kind of work that doesn't photograph well, that can't be packaged into a motivational post, that offers no evidence of your specialness. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power gets misunderstood more than almost any other philosophical idea. People read it as a call to domination, to proving yourself superior, to crushing the competition and standing alone at the top. They turn it into another version of the specialness myth, the idea that you're destined to rise above the masses, to transcend the ordinary, to become something beyond human. That's precisely backward. The will to power, in Nietzsche's view, is the fundamental drive to overcome resistance, to grow, to become more than what you currently are. It has nothing to do with being chosen or destined. It has everything to do with the constant process of self-overcoming. The emphasis is on overcoming yourself, your own limitations, your own comfort, your own excuses. The person you were yesterday is the obstacle. The habits you've built, the stories you tell yourself, the identity you've constructed, these are what stand in your way. When you interpret the will to power as evidence of your inherent specialness, you've already lost the thread. The whole point is that what you are right now means nothing. What matters is what you're willing to forge yourself into through sustained effort and honest confrontation with your weaknesses. Nietzsche didn't write for people who wanted confirmation that they were already great. He wrote for people willing to destroy their current self-image in pursuit of something harder earned. The comfort-seeking version of self-improvement wants the result without the process. It wants the transformed self without the discomfort of transformation. It wants to feel like an Übermensch while living like everyone else. The reading, the thinking, the discussing, these become substitutes for action. You consume philosophy as entertainment, as identity, as a way to feel sophisticated while changing nothing about how you actually spend your hours. Real self-overcoming looks nothing like the montages and transformation posts. It looks like doing the same difficult thing every single day when nobody's watching and nothing feels different. It looks like confronting the fact that your current approach isn't working and having the humility to change it. It looks like long stretches where progress is invisible and the only thing sustaining you is the commitment you made when motivation was high. The person who actually embodies the will to power doesn't need to announce it. They're too busy working. They're not special in any cosmic sense. They've simply decided that the gap between what they are and what they could become is more important than comfort, than validation, than the story they've been telling themselves about why things haven't worked out yet. If what we're talking about here resonates with you, if you're tired of the comfortable lies and ready for something more substantial, consider subscribing. The ideas we explore on this channel don't offer quick fixes or easy answers. They require you to sit with discomfort, to question assumptions, to think harder than the algorithm usually demands. The next section gets into something even more challenging. Why avoiding ordinary suffering guarantees extraordinary pain. Stay with me. Schopenhauer spent his life examining the nature of suffering, and he arrived at a conclusion that most people find unbearable. Suffering isn't an aberration. It's the default state. Desire creates suffering. You want something, you don't have it. You experience lack. You get what you want, the satisfaction fades and new desires emerge. The cycle never ends. The human condition is one of perpetual striving against perpetual dissatisfaction. The modern response to this reality is to treat suffering as a problem that can be solved. If you're unhappy, there must be something wrong with your circumstances, your brain chemistry, your childhood, your choices. An entire therapeutic and commercial apparatus exists to help you eliminate discomfort, to optimize your way out of the fundamental human experience. And when that doesn't work, when the dissatisfaction persists despite all the interventions, you conclude that you're uniquely damaged, that everyone else has figured out how to be content except you. What if the opposite is true? What if the people who seem most at peace have simply accepted that a baseline level of struggle is intrinsic to being alive? They still experience desire, frustration, disappointment, and boredom. They've just stopped treating these experiences as evidence that something has gone wrong. They've stopped waiting for a life free from ordinary difficulty. When you believe you're special, you believe you deserve exception from this common struggle. Your suffering feels like an injustice, a deviation from what should be happening. Other people might have to deal with mundane problems and repetitive challenges, but you were meant for something else. The universe owes you better conditions, better opportunities, better outcomes, and when those don't materialize, the bitterness compounds. The suffering you experience isn't just the pain itself. It's the pain plus the story that you shouldn't have to feel it. Schopenhauer's prescription wasn't cheerful, but it was honest. Reduce desire where you can. Accept that satisfaction is temporary. Find meaning in aesthetic experience, in contemplation, in moments of reprieve from the will's constant demands. Stop expecting existence to deliver something it was never designed to provide. The person grinding through a difficult job, managing mundane responsibilities, dealing with the same frustrations as everyone else, they're living the actual human experience. There's no special tier where those problems disappear. There's no level of achievement that makes you immune to boredom, dissatisfaction, or the creeping sense that maybe this is all there is. The CEO feels it, the artist feels it, the philosopher feels it. Schopenhauer himself felt it, despite understanding the mechanism better than almost anyone. The freedom comes from dropping the expectation of exception. When you accept that your struggles aren't unique, that your dissatisfaction isn't evidence of cosmic error, you stop adding the second layer of suffering. The original pain remains. Life still makes demands, things still go wrong, desires still go unfulfilled. What disappears is the additional agony of believing it shouldn't be this way, that you were promised something different, that if you were truly special, none of this would be happening. There's a fantasy about how greatness happens. It involves a moment of clarity, a sudden breakthrough, a transformation that others can witness and admire. The struggling artist who finally gets discovered, the entrepreneur whose idea suddenly takes off, the athlete who breaks through after years of obscurity. We love these stories because they suggest that the work eventually pays off in visible, undeniable ways, that suffering in silence eventually becomes celebration in public. Reality operates differently. The overwhelming majority of meaningful work happens in private, produces no immediate feedback, and offers no evidence that it matters. You write when nobody reads. You train when nobody watches. You refine your thinking when nobody cares what you think. The discipline required to continue under these conditions has nothing to do with being special. It has everything to do with deciding that the work itself justifies the effort, regardless of whether anyone ever notices. The need for external validation is where most people stall. They start the project, put in some effort, and then wait. They wait for recognition, for encouragement, for signs that they're on the right path. When those signs don't come, and they usually don't come early, the interpretation is that the work isn't valuable, that they're not talented enough, that they should try something else. The cycle repeats with the next project, the next interest, the next identity they try on and discard when it doesn't immediately prove their exceptionality. Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence poses a thought experiment. What if you had to live your exact life over and over again, infinitely? Every choice, every moment, every mundane Tuesday, repeating forever. Could you accept that? Could you love that? The test isn't whether your life looks impressive from the outside. The test is whether the life you're actually living, in all its repetitive ordinariness, is one you'd willingly repeat eternally. Most people fail that test because they're living for a future that hasn't arrived yet. They're tolerating the present in hopes of a better tomorrow. The current work is just a stepping stone to the real work. The current relationships are placeholders until the real connections form. The current self is a rough draft of who they'll eventually become. Everything is deferred, contingent, temporary. The person who actually accomplishes something significant operates from a different premise. They've made peace with the possibility that the work might never pay off in the ways they imagine. They've accepted that recognition might never come, that most of what they do will disappear without trace, that their contribution might be invisible or credited to someone else. And they continue anyway, because the alternative, living without engaging deeply with something, is worse. This isn't romantic. There's no dramatic music playing while you do the same technical exercise for the 10,000th time. There's no audience witnessing your incremental progress. There's just you alone with the work, making the choice to continue when every rational incentive says to quit. The specialness you were promised doesn't show up to make this easier. What shows up is the same resistance, the same doubt, the same difficulty that everyone faces. The only difference is whether you proceed anyway. The central lie isn't that you have potential. You do. Everyone does. The lie is that potential means something on its own, that it entitles you to outcomes, that it makes you different in some fundamental way. Potential is just unrealized possibility. It exists in every direction simultaneously until you commit to one path and foreclose the others. The moment you actually begin, you trade infinite potential for finite progress, and finite progress, measured against infinite possibility, will always feel like a disappointment. The culture of exceptionality trains you to maximize optionality, to keep every door open, to avoid commitment until you're certain it's the right one. The problem is that certainty never comes. You gather more information, seek more opinions, wait for clearer signs. Meanwhile, the people actually building something have accepted that they're probably wrong about half their assumptions, that they'll waste effort on dead ends, that much of what they do won't matter. They proceed anyway because proceeding imperfectly beats waiting perfectly. Schopenhauer would say that the wise person minimizes suffering by minimizing desire. Nietzsche would say that the strong person transforms suffering into fuel for self-overcoming. These seem contradictory, but they converge on a single point. The suffering is coming either way. The question is what you do with it. Do you spend your energy resenting it, explaining it, trying to optimize it away? Or do you accept it as the cost of being alive and direct your attention towards something worth the price? When you abandon the belief that you're special, something unexpected happens. The pressure releases. You no longer have to perform exceptionality, to curate evidence of your uniqueness, to maintain the image of someone destined for more. You can be ordinary. You can do ordinary work, have ordinary struggles, live an ordinary life. And paradoxically, that's when real work becomes possible. When it's no longer burdened by the need to prove something about who you are. The person who changes their field, who creates something lasting, who actually becomes exceptional in some measurable way. They didn't start from a place of believing they deserved it. They started from a place of committing to the work, regardless of whether it confirmed their specialness. They chose a path and walked it long enough that the path itself changed them. The exceptionality, if it came at all, emerged as a byproduct of the commitment, not as a validation of some innate quality. There's freedom in ordinariness, freedom from the constant performance, from the comparison, from the exhausting work of maintaining an identity that reality keeps contradicting. You can stop waiting for permission, for the right conditions, for evidence that you're different enough to deserve what you want. You can simply begin with full knowledge that you're ordinary, that the odds are against you, that most of what you do will fail or go unnoticed. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the willingness to work without the guarantee of exceptionality is itself the only thing that separates those who accomplish something from those who don't. The work doesn't care whether you're special. It only cares whether you show up. Day after day, year after year, in all the unglamorous repetition that nobody documents or celebrates. The question was never whether you're exceptional. The question is whether you'll do what's required when the answer is no.